Lead me up to the point of when you decided to get licensed and dive into this more as a career than just doing investing on the side.
Yeah, so like I said, I was mailing in at work at JP Morgan. I mean, I was a terrible employee. My performance reviews were, I just like was not working basically. I would go in there and just be on my phone.
Did
And
you did you lose interest in not wanting to go the Wall Street route anymore because you saw what the power of real estate investing was providing?
A little bit, but really, they just when I actually got a new job like a year into working corporate after college, and it was a nice pay bump, but they didn't train me for 6 months because they were like super, super busy. So I just like sat in the corner of like this big office building for like half a year and didn't get paid. And then after they, or I mean, got paid but didn't do any work. So after they paid me for half a year without doing any work, I was like, well, I want to keep not I don't want to do work now that they're giving me work. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I still want to get paid. And
Right.
I want a passive income, not having to work for that, which that's why. And then I had these units over here that were making me passive income. I'm like, I'm just going to keep doing this. So I started doing the bare minimum not to get fired. And I would be like following up on my phone with owners and going in early so I could leave as soon as like my 8 hours hit, which at that point I was like on salary. So I was supposed to kind of work more than 40 hours, but I didn't care. And I'd go home and start cold calling and hitting the phones. So that's what really drove me. And then as soon as they had layoffs, I think I was probably like the first person they called in to lay off. And they're like, hey, Remington, like, here's your severance. I got 45 days severance, or no, I got 45 days on call employment. So basically, I was still working for them. If they needed me, I would have to go work. But I was
Sure.
in the private bank underwriting like ultra high net worth clients. So they didn't really want me in with access to their tax returns and personal financial statements if I was getting laid off because it's kind of like security risk. So
Right.
they're basically like, just go home. Like, we'll pay you. You're good. And then after that ended, I got 7 weeks severance. So I was like, okay, I'll go home and I'll apply to like all these bank jobs, but then I'll also like start going to real estate meetups and figuring out what opportunities are out there. And through cold calling, I had met some mentors that I'd been networking with. So I interviewed like a few different brokerages, all kind of had property management arm. And I interviewed this one guy who had his broker's license but didn't have a brokerage. He just got the license to kind of do his own
Sure.
deals. And he's like, hey, if you want the opportunity, I'll let you use a broker's license. I'll act as your broker, but you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like if you want to start a team, that's great. Do that. If you
Yeah.
want to just do your own deals, that's fine. You don't really have to pay anything. Um, and we can just see how it goes. So that was in 2019. Now in 2023, we've got 27 licensed agents now, and we got about
Wow.
10 people in the training program. We mostly pull students from like OSU who are interested in real estate investing. There's one person right behind me, Ria, who's OSU student. We just had another OSU student who dropped out of college because the last 5 months he's been making $100,000 in commissions every month, and he just started in January 2022. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of a cool atmosphere. Every agent here pretty much owns real estate and is building towards that passive income, and we help clients do the same thing.
Yeah. When you decided to get licensed and turn it into a career, um, did you have any doubters, supporters?
Yeah, I mean, I guess not really when I decided to turn it into a career. My now wife was actually pretty supportive because I got a job offer back at JP Morgan, like right when my severance was ending for like more money than what I was making before. So I was like, hey, should I take this job? It's a guaranteed, 70,000 a year, or should I like try the sales role? I just got my license, but I hadn't like made any sales yet. And she's like, well, you know, maybe do the sales for a couple of years. So everyone was very supportive on that. They knew I didn't like my job, but I would say I had doubters when I bought my first property. I had a bunch of people that were on my team that were like, "Hey, Remington," this was in 2017. They were like, "Hey, Remington, the real estate market's at all-time high. It's your people are getting into bidding wars. You maybe shouldn't buy real estate. Maybe wait for the market to go down." And we're here in 2023. The market hasn't gone down, especially in Central Ohio. And now I own a bunch of property. I own commercial buildings. I own apartment buildings. You know, I have a team of brokers. So, and they're still working their 9 to 5 job, and maybe instead of making 60,000 a year, now they're making 80,000 a year, and
Yeah.
they still hate their job. So I'm
Yeah.
very happy I didn't listen to them.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just over the last 5 years, I mean, geez, if you, and that's what I try to tell people, none of us are going to be able to predict the future, but at the end of the day, real estate is a safe investment long term. And, it always goes up and it always comes back down, but usually that bounce back is a lot higher than it was the previous time. So,
Right. And I mean, there's you look at tech right now, everyone in Silicon Valley that was making good money, I mean, they're losing their jobs. And what I tell investors is like, hey, you think buying this duplex is risky, but I would say what you're doing right now is risky. How do you make money? And they're like, well, I only make money through my job. I'm like, okay, so you work for someone else? They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, what if that person comes in tomorrow and is like, hey, you're fired? You just went from your only source of income paying you to you making nothing. If
yeah,
you'd bought a duplex or you bought a closely held business or you bought fixed income or you bought investment stocks and you delayed, that fancy dinner or delayed that sports car, that short-term gratification for buying something that would bring you passive income like, real estate investment, you wouldn't be worried about getting laid off like I
yeah,
was.
yeah. It's a false sense of security, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what a W-2 salary is a false sense of security at the end
Yep.
of the
But
day.
it works really well for employers. So
Sure, sure. So specifically, and I don't know this, but are you only really helping or focused on helping people buy investments, or do you guys do all over? Your normal person that's buying the house to live in for 15 years, or are you narrowing down who your clientele is?
yeah, so for me, like I help my buddies buy their houses, sell their houses. If I get like a doctor or I mean really whoever, if I get an easy lob, client, I'll help them, no problem. I've got a full-time licensed assistant that works solely for me. So he's better with people than I am, especially on the residential side of things, like first-time home buyer sellers. He's got, you know, more empathy and he's got more design talent than I do. He'll pretend to care a little bit more about the color of the house. So he does most of those showings. So to answer your question, yeah, I do it all. My agents, there's some agents here that focus 80%, 90% on first time home buyer sellers. So to answer your question, we do it all. But on the investment side of things, I mean, that's where I really focus. I would say that's where a lot of our guys focus because we're just buying them ourselves. And then we do
Yeah,
all of Ohio. So we do a bunch of deals in Cleveland because it's so cheap. It's really great cash flow. I mean, you can buy a duplex for $80,000 and get 800 in rent per side. We do a lot
yeah.
of deals in Dayton, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Toledo, all over the place.